You've probably heard the phrase blue blood your entire life. Kings, queens, royal families, the people who supposedly stood above everyone else. But have you ever stopped and asked a simple question? Why blue? Why has every generation remembered those two words, while almost nobody remembers where they came from? Most people assume the answer begins in medieval Europe. It doesn't. To follow the trail, you have to leave the castles of Spain and travel thousands of miles east, into a region that old maps called Tartaria, where archaeologists uncovered unusually preserved burials, ancient ruling cultures, and discoveries that still spark debate today. Whether these findings reveal forgotten history, later legends, or something in between, is exactly what makes the story so fascinating. Because the deeper you follow the origin of the phrase blue blood, the more it leads toward one of history's most enduring mysteries. To understand why Tartaria researchers connect this mystery to the Eurasian steppe, we have to start with one remarkable discovery. In 1978, archaeologists working in China's Tarim Basin uncovered a remarkably preserved mummy unlike anything they expected to find. The man had been buried for nearly 3,000 years, yet much of his appearance remained visible. He had reddish-brown hair, a long, narrow face, a prominent nose. He wore finely woven wool clothing and carefully crafted leather boots, suggesting he was not an ordinary traveler crossing the desert. He was someone whose burial had been prepared with unusual care. That discovery surprised researchers because the Tarim Basin lies deep inside what is now Western China. Finding naturally preserved human remains wasn't unusual. Finding someone with physical features so different from the surrounding populations raised new questions. And he wasn't the only one. Over the following decades, archaeologists uncovered dozens of similar burials scattered across the same region. Men, women, children, many preserved by the dry desert conditions, some wearing colorful woven textiles, others buried with hats, jewelry, and objects that suggested social importance. Mainstream archaeologists generally explain these discoveries as evidence that different ancient populations moved across Central Asia over thousands of years, long before modern national borders existed. But researchers interested in Tartaria point to something else. They ask why so many unusual discoveries appear inside the same vast region that older European maps labeled as Tartaria. Then they look farther west, across Kazakhstan, southern Siberia, and the Altai Mountains. Archaeologists uncovered another series of remarkable burials. One became known as the Ice Maiden, another as the Golden Man. The Ice Maiden was buried beneath frozen ground, allowing her body, clothing, and even her intricate tattoos to survive for more than 2,000 years. The Golden Man was discovered wearing thousands of gold ornaments carefully sewn onto his clothing, a level of wealth that clearly identified him as part of an elite class. Although these discoveries belong to different cultures and different periods, they all raise the same question. Why do so many high-status burials appear across the same enormous corridor stretching from Eastern Europe to Western China? Ancient historians seem to notice the same pattern long before archaeologists ever picked up a shovel. Greek writers describe powerful horse-riding rulers from the northern grasslands. Persian records spoke of steppe peoples, who resisted some of the largest armies of the ancient world. Chinese chronicles also recorded groups arriving from the west, whose appearance and customs were different enough to deserve special attention. Different civilizations, different centuries, yet the same region keeps appearing. That doesn't automatically prove every later theory about Tartaria, but it does explain why the mystery continues to attract so much attention. Because once you begin placing the old maps, the ancient burials, and the historical records beside each other, the next question almost asks itself. If these elite cultures were remembered across so much of Eurasia, how did the phrase blue blood eventually become the symbol of nobility in Europe? That brings us back to the phrase itself. Today, almost everyone understands what blue blood means. A noble family, royal ancestry, an old bloodline believed to stand above ordinary people. But where did those exact words come from? The earliest widely accepted use appears in medieval Spain, where the phrase sangre azul, meaning blue blood, became associated with members of the nobility. The common explanation is straightforward. Many noble families had very pale skin, making the blue veins beneath it more visible. Over time, Visible veins became a symbol of aristocratic ancestry and social status. For many historians, that's where the story begins and ends. But others argue that it leaves an important question unanswered. If blue veins were simply a physical feature, why did bloodline become one of the most protected ideas in medieval Europe? Royal families didn't just value wealth or military power. They carefully recorded family trees, arranged marriages between noble houses, and often insisted that their lineage remained separate from everyone else. Blood itself became a symbol of legitimacy. That obsession has led some researchers to ask whether the phrase blue blood preserved the memory of something older than medieval Spain. Could it have been inspired by traditions that already existed among ancient ruling cultures? Supporters of Tartaria theories point toward the aristocratic societies of the Eurasian Steppe, arguing that powerful families maintained their status through generations in much the same way later European dynasties did. Mainstream historians, however, generally view these as separate historical developments rather than evidence of one continuous ruling lineage. Whichever interpretation someone finds more convincing, the discussion doesn't end in Spain. Because once researchers began comparing ancient burials, historical records, and even modern genetic studies, the mystery surrounding these elite groups became even more complicated. At this point, the mystery becomes even more interesting. Over the last 2 decades, advances in ancient DNA research have allowed scientists to compare genetic material from people who lived thousands of years apart. Those studies have confirmed that the Eurasian steppe was not an isolated region. For thousands of years, different populations moved across these grasslands, carrying languages, technologies, and traditions over enormous distances. Horses, wheeled transport, and long-distance trade all spread through this corridor, making it one of the most influential regions of the ancient world. For mainstream historians, this helps explain why similar cultural traditions appear across such a wide area. But for Tartaria researchers, the same discoveries suggest something different. They argue that the repeated appearance of wealthy burials, powerful ruling families, and sophisticated cultures across this vast territory may point to a forgotten civilization whose history later became fragmented into separate national stories. That idea remains highly debated. There is no academic consensus supporting the existence of a single Tartarian empire as described in many online theories. Even so, one fact is difficult to ignore. Old maps from the 17th and 18th centuries labeled enormous regions of northern and central Asia as Tartary or Great Tartary. Modern historians generally explain these labels as broad geographic terms used by European mapmakers for territories inhabited by many different peoples rather than one unified state. Yet those maps continue to fuel curiosity. If the name once covered such a vast part of the world, why did it later disappear almost completely from everyday history? That question has inspired countless documentaries, books, and debates, and it also brings us back to the phrase blue blood. Because if powerful ruling families really existed across these steppe cultures for centuries, was the European obsession with noble bloodlines simply a medieval tradition, or was it preserving the memory of something much older? That is the question that continues to divide historians, independent researchers, and Tartaria enthusiasts to this day. Perhaps that's why the phrase blue blood has never disappeared. Empires collapsed, kingdoms vanished, borders changed. Yet the expression survived. People continued using it long after most had forgotten where it came from. Whether that survival points to a forgotten civilization or simply the remarkable way language preserves old traditions depends on which historical interpretation someone finds more convincing. What is certain is that history is full of phrases that outlive the events that created them. Sometimes the words remain, while the story behind them slowly fades away. The mystery surrounding blue blood is a good example of that. Ancient burials still exist beneath the deserts of the Tarim Basin. The Ice Maiden still rests in a museum after more than 2,000 years. The Golden Man remains one of Kazakhstan's most recognizable archaeological discoveries. Old maps still preserve the name Great Tartary, even though modern political maps do not. None of those discoveries automatically prove a single hidden empire, but together, they continue to raise questions that historians, archaeologists, and independent researchers still debate today. Perhaps the most interesting lesson isn't whether every Tartaria theory is correct. It's that history is rarely as simple as it first appears. New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of ancient civilizations. Old documents are constantly being re-examined. Ancient DNA is revealing connections that previous generations could never test. Every decade adds another piece to the puzzle, and that puzzle is still incomplete. So the next time you hear someone described as having blue blood, remember that the phrase may carry far more history than most people realize. Whether its roots lie entirely in medieval Spain, or whether echoes of much older traditions helped shape its meaning over time, is a question that continues to inspire research, debate, and curiosity. Sometimes the greatest mystery isn't finding a forgotten civilization. Sometimes it's discovering that ordinary words have been quietly preserving fragments of the past all along. Whether blue blood began as a simple description of medieval nobility or preserves echoes of much older traditions is a question that historians and researchers continue to debate. What makes the subject fascinating isn't that every theory has been proven. It's that one ordinary phrase has survived for centuries, while its deeper origins remain a mystery. Ancient burials, old maps, royal bloodlines, forgotten civilizations. Each offers another piece of a puzzle that is still being explored. Perhaps the answer isn't hidden in a single discovery, but in how all of these clues fit together. And maybe that's why the story of blue blood continues to capture people's imagination today. Because history doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it survives quietly, inside the words we still use every day.